Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the HadesOmegaSPEC channel. This is going to be one of the first videos of 2020, so if you remember correctly, around Christmas 2019 I was working on this guy, the Sauron Lightbee. I had just installed the ERT ASI BAC2000 onto my Sauron Lightbee. Welcome to my HadesOmegaSPEC ERT ASI BAC2000 powered Sauron Lightbee. I know that's a lot of words. But I call it HadesOmegaSPEC because I have set it up to my specifications finally. So yeah. So it was I'm not gonna lie, it took a long time to get that bike the way I wanted to. And I just got it done today. I haven't even taken it out for a test ride or anything. We will do that tomorrow. But I will fire it up and I'll kind of show you around it today. I finally got it to where I want to ride it. Like, I haven't been riding this bike around because, one, I've been very sick, and two, the weather's been crappy, and three, it has no regen, and I don't want to ride this bike fast without regen. I'll tell you that now. From whence we left off, the last video was my first riding this bike after I had just installed the controller and the egg rider. So I'm gonna say, like, yeah. So I was a little disappointed at the end, and we had a lot of work to get it dialed in. Just basically two things that I wanted to get done, and then I was able to accomplish that today, about a week later. So yeah. So I was able to chat with Alan from ERT on Facebook Messenger, and we spent many hours trying to get this bike set up the way I wanted to. So thanks to Alan for helping me out. If you need help and you can get a hold of him, don't let that guy get away, man. You use him, use him when you can, man. He's a busy guy. So yeah, thanks to Alan, I was able to get this thing running the way I wanted it to. That's basically what this video is going to be about. It's going to be how we got it to how it is right now. I'm not going to go into really specifics because there's a lot of stuff in there that you can mess around with and that you shouldn't be messing with if you don't know what you're doing with it. Just like how I thought it was. And what I had used to get all the work done is smartphone, my LG G3 right here. So I'm gonna go over it a whole lot too. So yeah. So I work with Alan on over Facebook Messenger, and basically, so this is what he had told me about the egg rider. I don't know, like somewhere along the line, the egg rider firmware, it conflicts with the BAC2000 ASI, or the BAC2000, 4000, and 8000. So because of that, HadesOmega cannot recommend you get egg rider. Before this video, I was going to upload a video on how to upgrade the firmware and all that stuff because I had done it, and then I decided not to post it because I cannot recommend the egg rider firmware to anyone. I cannot recommend the egg rider little Bluetooth gauge to anyone at this moment, because it's like the source of all the problems I had with the bike. So even then I would say I got the bike 90% how I want it, simply because I can't open it back up and easily change settings and stuff, because and I'm going to explain that right now. So the way Alan explained it was that when when you write with the egg writer, when you write onto the controller, the BAC controller, it messes up some settings that make your bike pretty much non-operable. It won't work anymore. It sets it in a mode where like it won't. You can't. If you twist the throttle, it's not going to go, and that's a no-go. So what he was saying is he had to write protect the BAC ASI the controller. He had to write protect the controller so the egg writer, when it writes to the controller, it doesn't mess those settings up, and then your bike won't run. So he had to do that. So what we had to do. So I'm going to start from the beginning. So what we had to do is we had to find a firmware that like it would work nicely with, and I kind of did. I'm not going to lie. In the span of from this video till the last video, they had already updated the firmware like 3 times. 3 times. So it's a lot of work in progress. If you go into the notes for the firmware, it goes over all the stuff they changed, what they've been changing with it, like through every firmware, and like every other line on that they had changed on the firmware had to do with the ASI. So it's very much work in progress, that egg writer. It's a great, like HadesOmega is not gonna lie, it's a rad device. I really like it, but it's just not doing. It doesn't play nice with the BAC2000. The BAC2000, 4000, and 8000. What Alan had told me was that the egg writer is kind of more set up to deal with the BAC 800, the smaller one, the really small ones that go on the e-bikes and stuff. So it doesn't really, and from what I've noticed, it conflicts with the BAC 2000 controller. So they don't like to play with each other. That's what I would say. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go over everything that we did, just kind of summarize sort of it. So I was running the firmware 2.4.8, I think, is what the firmware came out. That's the stable version, is what they call it. And then they had another one called 2.4.11, and then so the day after I had flashed it, they came out with another one, 2.4.18. And then so the day after me and Alan were working on it, it was 2.4.19. So they're very much working on that egg writer. So just to summarize, we update. I flashed the firmware, different firmwares. He was saying like the newest version kind of bricks it or something, or it messes up the controller, and then so we just kept on trying to flash different things in it. So he went in and we set the BAC controller to write enable. Basically, it's kind of like on a floppy disk or SD card. You got that little button on the little corner on the floppy disk, and basically if you flip it and there's like a hole there, it prevents you from writing onto the disk. And so basically in essence that's what it is. It keeps you from overwriting the settings remotely with the egg writer. That's one of the features of the egg writer. It can get into the ASI and change certain settings, but when it does that, it sets it in what's called a reserve mode, and you don't want that. It won't operate in the reserve mode. So what happened was we tried the different firmwares and it was messing up the controller. So every time it wrote to the controller, it would throw it back into that reserved mode, and then the bike wouldn't work anymore. So we'd have to actually go in the controller. So yeah, I was actually able to use the program, the app that you can make the settings on the controller. It's called Backdoor. You can actually find it. I was trying to look for it before in the App Store, and I couldn't find it, and it turns out I probably was spelling it wrong or something. But it's called Backdoor 2.0 by ASI, and then it lets you log into the controller, but you need like a password and stuff. So yeah, so I needed to get that from Alan and stuff. And then with that, you can go into the controller and you can change settings and stuff. So so we enabled the controller first, and then we tried different firmwares on the egg writer, and it was okay. But it seemed like the latest version of the egg writer firmware, the beta version, the 2.4.19, the latest one, it seemed to help a little bit. It seems like it kind of worked. It put the settings in the controller a little better, but it's still kind of wonky. Is what I'm gonna say. So yeah, but once we enabled the controller, and the settings in the egg writer were all messed up. They were like the wrong settings. I had to ask Alan. I had Alan hold my hand like pretty much the whole time, asking him like, "Hey, so what settings do I put in here for the Sauron?" And so he gave me a bunch of settings. Just plug in there. So all I can say is like Alan has done all the homework for you, so he knows this stuff pretty well. So he knows all the settings and stuff to put in there. You know, like I didn't know anything, so I would be lost if I didn't have them. That's what I'm gonna say. So that's why buying from ERT is a good thing, because he has done all the homework for you already, for the most part. I was gonna say, but except in my case, that's what I'm gonna say. So yeah, we had to really work on this thing. So yeah, once I got the latest firmware installed, I noticed like, hey, we can actually start changing stuff in the thing, and it actually makes a difference. It starts to do stuff. So the biggest issue I had with the BAC2000 controller or the egg writer display was the speed. The speed's off by a lot. Like I mentioned in the last video, at like 10 miles an hour, it's like 2 miles an hour off. At like 20 miles an hour, it's like 5 miles per hour off. At 40 miles an hour, it's like 20 miles per hour off. It's like really off, the speedometer. So it's pretty much useless. So I was able to edit the wheel size. I used 1900 millimeters, which is pretty close to what I had calculated. I think I calculated 1795, like 1800, and I feel it's about 1 or 2 miles per hour too fast, which is perfectly fine. That's fine. Like 1 or 2 miles per hour is fine. I don't care about that. It was saying we were going too slow before. Now it says we're going a little bit too fast, but we'll find out tomorrow when I actually take it for another test run. So yeah, I was able to edit that, and then the next big thing was I was able to enable regen. So and that's another big headache in itself. So Alan told me the settings to put on to enable regen, and so what I had discovered from messing around with the ASI controller and the egg writer is that the regeneration settings are all messed up in the egg writer, dude. It'll go in there and it'll change these settings they're not right, you know. So let me tell you the story about the first time I had enabled the regen. So I got it. I set the regen on and I took it out for a test ride. And once I let go of that throttle, it just locked the rear end up, and it just started skidding. And then I lost throttle control too. I couldn't keep it from braking. It just kept on. It's like the way I can describe it is, if you remember, you know, in the cars, in the old cars we had something called an e-brake, right? It's a little or a side brake or hand brake or something, and you pull it up and it stays up unless you press the button, right? It's kind of like that. It's like if you pulled the e-brake up and then until the car stopped, it wouldn't give you throttle input. That's what it was like. It was like basically you pulled the e-brake up, the back would lock up. And in fact, it was so bad, and not only did it lock the rear wheel up, it would actually rotate backwards a little bit too. You would feel the bike go backwards for a second. So yeah, it was all bad. 100% regeneration on on this thing is no joke, dude. It's too much. It's too much regen. So that's the story of the first time I had enabled regen. So and Alan was saying it's not supposed to do that. That's kind of weird. And what I had found out messing around with it for like 3 days straight, like in the cold weather, and I was sick and stuff. I must have put more than 6 hours working on this, on the whole app and all that stuff. So, what happened? Yeah, so I had gotten the regen to work. So first we fixed the speedometer. That's great. Oh, we can use the speedometer again. And then now we're trying to enable regen, and then I would be happy. Like I can actually ride the bike, because I don't really want to ride this thing without regen. So now we enabled regen, and it works, but it works. One, it works too well, and two, it doesn't. It locks up the rear. That's like very dangerous. If you went into a corner and you just rolled off, the back would lock up, and then you would probably low side the bike. That's very dangerous. You don't want it to be like that. So like, yeah, Alan was scratching his head, and today I figured it out. I figured it out today. So there's a brake torque settings in the regen menu for the ASI controller. So what the Egg Rider was doing, it was writing those settings in wrong. They were putting them in backwards. One of them was supposed to be 2000, and one of them was 500 or something. And I was just playing around with the numbers. I was like, well, what if I switch these numbers around? So I flip-flopped the 2000 and the 500 for the brake torque, and then it worked. It smoothened it out a whole lot. It would go into regen, and then but if I roll back on the throttle, it would go out of regen. And I had set it for 50% of the engine braking, so like it didn't lock up right away. So that's good, and it didn't go backwards. So if you set it to 100, it's just way too much. The bike is super light too, so you don't really need a whole lot of regen. So I would say, well, anyway, let's talk about like everything else. So I kind of messed up putting the 500 in, and I put 50 in, and then I was like, oh, it's actually smoother now, because before there was like a little jerk. Yeah, so when the bike was ready to go again, like when it fully stopped, there would be a sudden boom, big jerk when you give it throttle. So basically when I had it the way I wanted it, and then I accidentally put 50, like I chopped off a decimal place basically, or I 500 turned into 50 accidentally, and I'm like, oh, it actually works better. It's smoother like this. And so I got the takeoff and the slow and the braking pretty smooth. So I would say if you compare it to the X controller regen, it's probably got 2 or 3 times more regen than what the X controller gives you. So, and that's great. I like it. I like a lot of regen. Okay. So unfortunately, we can't change it on the fly, because of what I'm going to tell you next. So anyway, we got the regen. I got the regen working finally. I've been scratching my head for like 2 days already, playing with it, and I was about ready to give up on it, because I did not want to ride this thing without regen. Because I'll tell you this, man, when you're going like 40 miles an hour and you roll off the throttle and they don't want to stop, and you got to use the mechanical brakes to stop, that's no fun. It's kind of scary, is what I want to say. You're gonna burn your brakes up like real fast if you don't have regen, is what I'm gonna say. 40 like 20 miles an hour, okay, but 40 miles an hour, dude, I'm telling you, it don't want to stop. This will come to a stop pretty easily. It's also set at 5 or 10 kilometers an hour to stop regenning. So if you're going really slow, there won't be any braking effect. So when you're riding slow, you don't have to worry about it, jerking and stuff. You don't really need. It's hard to get regen when you don't have high RPMs. The higher your RPMs are, the more regen your motor will provide. So So yeah, I got it working. So I got the regen working. So we got the speedometer. I got the regen working. What else? I was also able to get the battery gauge working on it too. Because if you remember correctly, it always say 100. So all I had to do was go to the and I'll go over it on the phone. All I had to do is go into the display settings and then edit the battery numbers in there. I think before it wasn't changing it or anything. And plus, I don't even know what the voltage was, so I just kept on plugging numbers in to get to sync the egg rider display up to the display on top of the battery to get it pretty close. It's probably not perfect, but it's, if you want the right number, then just look down at the battery. So, but if I had to take a quick glance to see how much charge I'd have, I could do it by just looking at the egg rider instead of having to look straight down at the battery. So yeah, I was pretty happy. So therein lies the problem. Like it's still kind of broken. That's what I'm gonna say. So whenever you, so what I notice is whenever you turn the egg rider on, and the controller isn't protected, it overwrites some of the settings in the ASI, and then it just kind of breaks it. It doesn't do anything. So and if you write to the ASI controller, it won't, it'll mess it up too. So like pretty much you can't do any programming with the egg rider. So what we had to do was I had to get it all perfect. I had to get it the way I wanted. So I got the speedometer working. I got the regen working. I got the battery gauge working. I had set it for, and I'll just go over all the settings and stuff real quick. For the end of the video. And so yeah, once I got it dialed in the way I wanted it to, I had to lock the controller. I had to right protect the controller again, so the egg rider won't change the settings in the controller again. So we can't use the egg rider to change the settings anymore, because it messes it up. And then you have to go into the controller and change the settings and stuff so the bike will run again. So that's my story. So I had just got that done today. Let's go fire the bike up, and I'll kind of show you around the control how I have the HadesOmegaSPEC set up. And then tomorrow, but like the next part of this video we'll do a quick test ride around the neighborhood, and I'll show you what it can do. All right.